I know my mother's fortitude and her courage is what helped me embark on this journey and to continue. Um, Tried to be as very discerning and diplomatic as possible, but sometimes you just got to put it out there. So don't be afraid if you think there might be some dark shadows lurking in your family. Don't be afraid to pursue that, because there's a way of going about and leaving people with their dignities and their, I guess their reputation is what they're trying to protect. So you can go about doing this in a way that doesn't hurt them or you going forward. So this is my personal connection to the Trueheart family. And although my journey was primarily to find my father in that part of my family, I've always known that there were certain individuals I didn't know on the Trueheart side. And it was only until a few years ago, as a result of me looking for the Powells, that I learned more about Richard and Emily and my place in the larger family tree of Truehearts. So it's kind of interesting. Now, one thing I want to bring to your attention is the fact that even though there are a lot of names on here, I've been working on this for about 6 years. And like I said, it's a continued process for me. What's unique about my mother was actually her parents, so my grandparents. My grandmother was Sadie Trueheart, and my grandfather was Walter Clinton Trueheart. Now, some of you I've met just this afternoon. We have that connection through that part of the family tree. But what makes them unique is that they were cousins. So my mother had the distinct privilege of being related to the Truehearts on both sides of her family, her mother and father. It's kind of unusual, right? But as a result of that, I have double cousins. I have cousins that I'm related to by marriage, some related to just by blood, some I'm related to by blood and marriage. So it can get pretty interesting and unique, the things that you discover. Now, so as I mentioned, some of the lessons learned were very interesting and some of them were a little bit hard, so more challenging. As I mentioned, you discover the distant cousins that you have. Some of them you might know already, some you just learn from family reunions, and others as you get on Ancestry, that's when you start getting the text messages from them from all over the world, from all over the country. And these family ties are something that you want to build over time. It's going to take a little time, but as I mentioned, don't be discouraged because there's going to be hiccups along the way. Now, family trees and the longevity, I feel like they're very much like real trees. They can build us up, or if they are destroyed, they, the fruit that they would produce is gone forever. So family trees are very much like real trees. Now, in my research, I found that there's a couple of trees that real literal trees that have longevity, and I thought this was interesting. There's one called the Prometheus bristletone pine. It was in Nevada. It lived to be 4,862 years old. But at some point, I don't know if it was the park ranger or someone in the government, they cut it down in 1964. But had they not done that, who knows how long that tree would have lived. The reason why I say that, because there's another tree, the pando, which is a quaking aspen tree in California, That's me, by the way, standing at that tree. So you can see how pretty big trees get sometimes. Um, and that tree in California that I'm standing up against lasts for thousands of years. The pando actually can live between 14,000 and 16,000 years. So you have to ask yourself, how come plants can live longer than humans? You know, maybe because they go with the environment. They sustain themselves no matter what the climate is, or you know, they adjust and adapt. Humans not so much, and families are even more vulnerable because of things like family secrets. It can break apart a family. It can cause them to fracture, or there can be hard feelings that you never get over. Now, finding your roots, pardon me. So, finding your roots is like recovering a precious heirloom that you never knew was missing. Sometimes when you do find it, though, it can make you feel more complete. Now, we've all lost things, material things. Maybe it's an umbrella or a beautiful scarf or even a diamond ring. Family trees, however, connect us to our heritage, and they go a long way. Pardon me. In the process of genealogy, that research can make us feel like it's a spiritual journey, right? But if this lost and found is not, this lost and found is a place of discovery. So sometimes when you lose things, you know exactly where to find them again. You feel better about it, but it's not just the material things, but sometimes we lose people too. There's the expression, I lost my mother in death, or she fell asleep in death, or I lost a precious memory. These are things, sometimes they're tangible, sometimes they're not. But the thing about ancestry is when we lose something, we can find it again if we know where to look. So for us, the Truehearts, we have that family tree. Every year we know we can come and find our place in that tree. And we see how it has expanded and grown, but we know that we're a part of it too, aren't we? Speaking of things that are lost and found, as I mentioned, sometimes they can be people. For me, the greatest loss I had growing up was not knowing my father or my father's side of the family. And I felt like those people were lost to me. That was half of my family I didn't know existed. So I set out to find them. And to do that, I had to start by asking questions. So, asking questions. Sometimes there's lots of them, sometimes you just don't even know where to start. My suggestion to you would be to start with the oldest member of your family, If it's a great aunt or your grandmother, someone who knows the family history, start with them, asking them the questions about your close relatives. Because you have to get started. That's the most important thing. If you think that this is going to fall in your lap one day, somebody's done it for you, and you know that's like having a whole tree, right? But as we mentioned at the outset, it's a part of having roots which are already established for you, but then you have to develop the branches. So that's going to mean maybe digging up some things, because anytime you plant things, it's not easy, is it? Sometimes there are rocks, thorns, so you have to pull things out. So sometimes asking those questions is akin to pulling information out of relatives that really don't want to disclose certain information. Now, I feel like as I mentioned, the half of my family being lost to me was pretty hard. I felt as a result I was born lost because I didn't have a family name. Now you might say, well, Crystal, how could you not have a family name? You have so many names now. But growing up, I grew up in a time where having children out of wedlock was really not looked upon very well. And in Black families anyway, they didn't have the luxury of being able to send the unwed mother away to have her child during the summer and come back as if nothing had ever happened. That really only happened to people of the other persuasion, right? So that meant not only do you have a child out of wedlock, that child now is faced with going to school, maybe having the same name as your mother. There's questions being asked. But what about the relatives? How do they treat that child who has that stigma attached to them? It can be really hard, and it was hard for me. So the loss was not just from not knowing my father's side of the family. The loss also came from being treated different from the rest of my cousins, siblings, just the rest of my relatives, because, and not even understanding, because we're talking about a child here, right? Someone who did not ask to be in this situation. But there was another time that I was lost, literally lost. So I'm about 3 years old, and we were living with my grandmother, Sadie. And I got the notion in my head that I'm gonna take a walk, I'm going for a trip. At the time, the rule was you do not leave the front yard. Just stay close to the house. I was the oldest of, or I would be the oldest of my two siblings. I'll explain that in a second. But at the time I was the only one, and the person who was to look after me was my Uncle Bobby. Some of you know him. He's the only one of my mother's 7 siblings who is still living today. Unfortunately, he wasn't well enough to travel here, but I don't know what he was doing, but he was looking after the dog. He certainly wasn't looking after a 3-year-old. So I decided I would leave the front yard and go for a walk. And I would look at the ground, I would look at my feet, keep walking until I was just ready to look up again. Well, what happened was, got out of the front yard and I walked for a very long time in my mind. Walked for a long time, got lost. I look up, I have no idea where I am. And then all of a sudden the panic sets in, right? So I start crying and pitching a fit because I know I'm lost. I don't know how to get back home. So this white lady comes out of her house and she says, baby, she said, are you lost? And I'm like, yes, I can't find where I belong. She says, well, what's your name? I don't know. I only know my name is Crystal, but I can't tell her my last name. I'm only 3, right? So she takes me in, tries to console me and figure out a way how to get me back to my home. But during all of that, during the process, I'm panicked. I'm feeling like I'll never see my family, my loved ones again. She's trying to help and can't. I can't identify myself. So family names are extremely important because they tell us who we belong to, don't they? When you're born, what's the first thing you do when you meet someone? When you met me this morning. Hi, my name is Crystal. Hi, I'm Cousin Karen. this is how we connect with one another through our names. And family names are very, very important. The reason why we're so proud to be here this weekend is because we have the Trueheart name in common. It is our family name. But getting back to the story, so the old lady didn't know what to do, but it turns out my aunt, doll baby, and her younger brother, Bobby, they ended up finding me. Well, my Uncle Paul was with them too, but everybody was mad at me. Everybody was mad because they spent all this time looking through street after street, neighborhood after neighborhood, finally found me. I thought they would be relieved the way I was that, yay, my family is here now. They've come to rescue me. They've come to stand by me. Well, one picked me up by one arm and the other one picked me up by the other. My feet never touched the ground until I got home. And then when I got home, the reception I got there from my mother and then my grandmother, I to this day, I have not forgotten that whipping. That was like the worst beating I had ever gotten. And they were allowed to do that back then, by the way. So, but the point of the matter is, I felt what that feels like to be lost, to be physically separated from your family. So can you imagine not knowing where you belong, who you belong to? What's the reason why you were given life and brought into this world? All those questions go dark until you start digging and asking people. And I asked one relative after another, who's my father? What's his name? Where does he live? How come he didn't come look for me? What happened? None of those questions could be answered. Well, I take that back. They could have been answered, but it was chosen not to respond. Every person says, I don't know, Crystal. So when you're 10, 15, you're 18 and you're in your 20s, and after a while you start thinking, wait a minute, everybody can't, there's gotta be somebody there. I didn't just fall out of a tree. How come nobody's talking? How come nobody's telling me I have a right to the answers? But no one wanted to say. So as it turned out, later, I think it was after my daughter was born, I finally asked my grandmother one more time, who's my father? And you could see the look on her face like she just didn't want to address it. And finally, she said, Crystal, I don't know anything about those people. I only know their last name was Powell, and I think your father went into the military. That's it. So later, what I found was through working with a genealogist, my father did go into the military when I was about 5 months old. And I did not know who he was. There was no interaction between he and my mother. My mother married when I was 2 years old. It's not 2 years old. My mother married when I was 4 years old. And then by then my brother and sister had come along as well. So we were a family. We were a blended family. We were a step family. Up until the time I was adopted at 6. So my name changed from Trueheart to Rogers. So then I became Crystal Dolores Rogers. Now I have a family name, right? But I know that this family name didn't really come from my biological father. How was I going to remedy that? I think my mother at the time felt that as long as she took care of that in her way, where I didn't have to go to school with the stigma of being an illegitimate child because my last name was different from my brother and sister. She thought that that should be enough and I shouldn't ask any more questions. But the questions were there. It was like having a hole in my heart, right? So sometimes you're going to have different motivations for building your family tree. Maybe if you're an adoptee, the way I was, you're trying to find that biological parent. Maybe you just want to know a little bit more about your background, where you came from. So you'll do your ancestry tree for that reason. Whatever the reason, let it be something that is unique to you, that has meaning to you, so that you'll continue the journey no matter what. So as I mentioned, there were some families, some challenges in my family, but discovering hidden truths sometimes can create tension, as I mentioned, but it can also build trust over time if the relationships that you discover have special meaning for you. I thought I only wanted to find my father so I could know something about why he wasn't part of my life growing up. But I actually discovered more. He passed away in 2006. Turns out he lived in the same city I lived in for, I don't know, maybe 20 years. I probably passed him in the grocery store, never knew he was my father. I probably sat in my car at a stoplight right next to his, never knew who he was, never made that connection. But as a result from me taking that journey and sticking with it, I discovered I had other brothers and sisters along the way. COVID happened in 2020, I believe, right. So it was during that year, I had more time to be online, that I discovered who my brothers and sisters were. So I went from being the oldest of 3 to being the oldest of 10. And actually, there's 2 of them I'm still looking for and haven't found yet, but we're working on it. Do I have any regrets about finding those siblings? Absolutely not, because you can't choose your family, right? You can't choose your biological family. It's no different than if you discover them on Ancestry. It's still worth it, isn't it? Because they are family. So as a result, have the secrets served me? Yes and no. On one hand, I could shut the door, kind of close the door on that question mark about who I belong to, who was responsible for me being here. But at the same time, I dug up secrets like you wouldn't believe. I sometimes wonder if the Temptations did not faction that song, Papa Was a Rolling Stone, after my dad, because every time I turned around, I was on Ancestry, there was a cousin popping up who really wasn't a cousin, but a brother or a sister. And I'm like, good God, how many seeds did this man have? I mean, it was just like all over the place. But I don't regret it, because I do have a relationship with all of them. Do we have issues and problems? Yes. There's a lot of situations that exist in families, especially in Black families, that I also learned still existed in mine. There's the jealousy issue over colorism. Why some siblings are treated one way and others a different way because of the complexion of their skin. Sometimes you think these are only things that you read in stories of other people's lives, but when it's part of your life, it really does hit home. But again, I would not change how I came to find them. I don't regret having found them. But the secrets didn't stop with, or didn't start with the discovery of my father's side of the family, nor did it stop with the Trueheart side of the family. I'm still learning things as I go along, but it is definitely worth it. So what are some of the lessons and benefits? Forgiveness is huge. So I had to learn to forgive my mother, who, had I not taken this step, I still would feel lost. I have had to learn to forgive my newly discovered brothers and sisters, because we didn't grow up together. We're just now learning how, who we are and how we impact each other's lives. I did tell them I was coming here this weekend. They were very excited for me. We meet every day in a family chat room where we don't do anything except say good morning. Hope you have a great day. Some I have visited, some of them have come to visit me. Some have decided they don't want to have anything to do with me, and that's okay. It happens in every family, right? I actually even got to know my stepmother. My father's wife is still living. So we've all met one another, and we've made the effort to try to get to know one another. So don't be afraid. Don't let that fear keep you in the dark. Don't let it build on those bad, negative feelings, rather. Put them aside and look at the bigger picture, which is your branch of the tree. You can't add to what we already have if you don't work on it, and it does take work. But it doesn't mean that there are no benefits, because there is that legacy building. Maybe, I always say that my mother didn't leave me with millions of dollars, but what she did leave me lasted longer. You see, that determination to keep moving, pressing forward, even when everybody else is against you. Because there were people who said, no, don't open up that can of worms. Once that door is open, you might not be able to close it, and then what are you gonna do? So that's something that each of you would have to decide on your own. But your journey does wait for you. You can embrace the truth. Don't let what you might uncover keep you from embracing the truth, because each truth and its richness is waiting for you. They're like seeds, right? You have to plant before you can grow anything. And those roots are something that's already been established for you. Take advantage of that. Ask now. So again, speak with those elderly relatives. The problem with not doing that is that once they're gone, once they've fallen asleep in death, all that information, that history goes right with them. Can't get it back. And you're doing this not just for yourselves, but for your children and future generations as well. So you want to document your branch. You're going to learn in a little bit how to create a family tree. But if you have questions, either about my personal journey or just in general, I'd be happy to answer those for you. But at this point, I think we're going to open up to anyone who has any questions or comments. We welcome both. Oh.
One suggestion I made to my, I think it's a good suggestion for all the owners in here, is to make a verbal documentation of themselves. Just, it doesn't have to be anything truly in depth, but just their history recorded, that it can be listened to later. And with the technology we have now, you can take that recording and put it in, and it will actually digitally write it out for it. And that way, one of the things I know I missed for my mom passing and my grandparents is not hearing their voice.
Right.
So it's nice to be able to have that later, but also to have that history. Like you said, sitting down and trying to write it down when they're telling us is one thing, but if they record it, and they could do that once a day, once a week, just going through and just telling the history and things that are going on.
Sure. It's like a diary, and especially if they have personal experiences that they want to record related to their grandchildren or their great-grandchildren. There's no better gift. You don't have to leave them $1 million. Well, actually, if you have $1 million, I will go ahead and do that. Who am I to keep you from your, all your legacy? But having those recordings is more than valuable. It's like you said, it's kind of like having the person there, when they can see them and hear their voice, but also I think it adds to the bigger picture too, the fact that now you can see the individuals that you're talking about. You think about, suppose we had the personal background of Richard himself to tell us what life was like during his time. I mean, that would be invaluable. But also the way technology is going today, I think we need to think about the future. People like to journal, but not everybody likes to write things down. But the wave of the future is going to be AI, and we have to think in terms of how we're going to keep these stories alive, because because that technology can also be used to the detriment of individuals. Let's say they used it to wipe out all of your history. Then where do you go? So the best thing to do is to use what we have now. So if our elderly ones are here, especially this weekend, try to get to know them, introduce yourself. Introduce your children if they're here. Don't just let them spend time at the pool. Help them to appreciate that this weekend is very special, because these gems, these valuable ones, aren't going to be with us forever. So you need to take advantage of that. But that's an excellent point, and I think we had talked about maybe thinking in terms of that storytelling. That's something that has helped our community to survive when people were trying to make sure we didn't know how to read or write. But being able to have that gift of storytelling probably has almost disappeared, but doesn't mean it can't be revisited. And probably something we should think of as a Trueheart clan as well going forward. Excellent. Any other questions?
What tips would you give to people that are looking for genealogists?
Bonus question?
Okay,
I'm
sorry. So the question was, what would I suggest you do if you're looking for a genealogist to work with? So how I came across the one that helped me was, I started with Ancestry, first of all. There are groups on the internet. Facebook comes to mind. The Search Angels is on Facebook. Their role is to help you, especially if you're looking for a biological parent, if you're adopted. They're very good about helping you find that lost parent, and they do it for free. In fact, the woman that I worked with, I tried to pay her, and she wouldn't let me pay her, because the work she did was so extensive. She took 2 pieces of information. That was my father's last name and the fact that he entered the military. And within 3 days, she was able to tell me not only who he was, but where he lived, his military record, which is why I knew he enlisted when I was 5 months old. And it just was reassuring because, I was starting to have dark thoughts that led me to believe how I came about, and it wasn't very good. But, she said, you don't have to worry about that. But to answer your question about how to go about finding them, you can do the search on Facebook, tell them your story, and they have a broad one, but there are also groups that are very specific, like if you have a relative who is a member of the Union Army or Confederate Army, and you wanted to just take your journey down that road, you could do that. There's a lot of different things. So don't worry about, there's some agencies that charge, and that might be the only way you can go, but as long as you get the answers to the questions, it would definitely be worth it. But like I said, and I'm still in touch with the genealogist that helped me. She's into forensic, she's helping the police department in San Francisco with crime scenes because she likes to unearth secrets, and which is probably why she was so good with helping me. So she doesn't work with that any longer, but there are people out there and they just love. It's like if you're really good about putting puzzles together. I hate puzzles. My mom was real big on them. She liked 1,000 pieces or more. I like it. There are other ways to go crazy, other than doing puzzles. But if you find someone who gets a big kick out of unearthing, mysteries, secrets, that's the person you want to get to help you with your, because you're going to run into some brick walls, even on Ancestry. It doesn't have all the answers. So you can do that. And there may be some groups in your local area where you live. But yeah, I would start online with the search first and see what that comes up. And of course, the Historical Society here has a background in that as well, and they can try to answer questions. And if they don't know the answer, they know how to find the answers to your questions. Yes, ma'am.
In addition to what you were saying as far as finding a genealogist, I know a local library sometimes have them. So, and they usually have connections.
So local library, she says, is a good resource, a good source to
And
turn to.
yes, and sometimes they're connected with the universities that are in the area. So sometimes going through your local library might be helpful.
Thank you for bringing that up, because with local libraries, we often think about doing our searches online all the time, but the libraries haven't gone anywhere. Neither have their resources, and I know, Shirley, you have some background too in utilizing that source for searching for things. But the African American Museum also has an entire department that is designed to help families, individuals like yourself, search in their family trees for documents or how to go about acquiring information. We're at a disadvantage, African Americans, because a lot of our documentation was destroyed during or even during or after the Civil War, around that time. So a lot of our court papers, documents, birth certificates, even just being able to find the names of your ancestors can be, a real struggle. But they have individuals there, and of course there's no charge. You just have to make an appointment. You can go down there, and if you think that's something you might want to do, I would go sooner rather than later, because some people are trying to dismantle the African American Museum and remove or destroy all of the artifacts there. So again, this is why it's important for us to think about our own branches, but the bigger picture, or the tree that we have established, gathering as much information. Of course, the more of us that are in the discovery process, the better it will be. We'll all benefit from that, and our children, our children's children, after that. But great question about the libraries, because that's also a free resource. Anyone else? Okay, well, thank you very much for your time, appreciate it. I'm going to turn over the helm to Cousin Angela at this time, who's going to continue your journey with ancestry.